over the last weeks, my research decided to honor Easter by being very on brand and then dying and then rising from the dead a few days later. Is it too goofy?
No, I think it's great.
Okay, but in all seriousness, yeah, so I ran into a massive issue in a study that I'm working on. It was one of the like worst case scenarios. So I have a conference. I'm going to NetSci in 2025, June 6. If you are going to NetSci for some reason in Maastricht, let me know. Let's hang out. So I have a poster there to present, and I've been working on that study. The study itself, I'm analyzing kind of like my data about like content sharing and media brands from our company partner with graph neural networks. I have been absolutely fascinated and in love with graph neural networks ever since I learned about them. They combine two of the things that I really like, which is graphs and neural networks. It's amazing. I wanted to do a bit of a tricky regression with them, like a type of regression that currently no statistical method allows on networks. And I coded the whole thing down, and I was running some experiments and hyperparameter tuning, and I was like, oh yeah, this is very good, and oh my god, my R-squared is so good, and everything was doing fine. And then I ran like a comparison fixed effects regression, ignoring the entire network structure and half of my variables, and I just like plugged it in, and then it got an R-squared of 0.99, which means that the simple regression, like linear regression, without meaningful features, outperformed my graph neural network on predicting the variable I wanted to predict. And that was a bit shocking, because this really shouldn't happen. Because it's like, oh, this is so complicated data, how is it possible? And then after taking a second look at my data, I realized that the target variable I wanted to predict had basically zero variance, which is not good. If you know anything about regressions, then you know that this is not good. If you don't know anything about regressions, the best way to explain it is that the way a regression works is that you want to see how changes in one thing affects changes in another thing, right? This is essentially what you're doing. If this goes up, does this go up or down? In order to do this, both of these have to change. If this one doesn't change at all, then these can change all they want and you won't know anything about the relationship. Suboptimal. And I was really, really taken aback by this because I just couldn't really come up with a way like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? I have this conference in 5 weeks and like my main analysis cannot be done because like I have no variance. Then came the Easter break and I took a bit of a stressful trip to family. There were some like health issues involved. Now everyone is doing much better, so thankfully, everyone's good, but it was a bit of a stressful period, so research was not the first thing on my mind. Afterwards, I just came back, and I got back to work, and I opened up my laptop and read my notes, and I was like, yes, this stupid variance problem. I was really, really taken aback by this, like, what am I supposed to do with this now? And I tried to, like, read my way out of it and, read more papers and try more stuff and do a different network configuration or something, and nothing really felt good. I feel like it's important to point out here that the amount of panic I was feeling is still like a fraction of what this would have felt like in the first year of my PhD. I think I made a video about this. If there is one, I'm gonna link it. I think it's this corner. So, if you're freaking out and you are in your first year, it's gonna get better. Promise. I was still not very happy about it. And then I saw that like while I was working, a little like Outlook notification popped that like, oh yeah, I had a chat scheduled with 2 fellow PhDs. And both of them are great. We were reading a book together, but now that we kind of like finished up the important pieces of the book for us, we just kept our little session to just chat about research. And like if one of us has an issue, then we can just talk it over. The 3 of us, it's like the 3 like Powerpuff Girls or 3 Musketeers, depending on which aesthetic you're going for. It's super nice. Shout out Tom and Nils. Thank you very much, guys. And then I saw that I have a meeting with them, and I really didn't feel like stopping this experimentation. I really didn't feel like kind of like chatting. I was like, oh my god, I have this massive issue. Like, am I gonna go and like chat? And I was like, okay, let's make it like formal, and then let's ask their opinion about this, right? This is what we have these meetings for. Let's just try it out. It's very funny because our expertises are very well mixed because I come from math, so I'm very like at home with like nasty formulas and abstraction. One of us comes from AI and machine learning, so like, you know, that part is covered, and then one of us comes from like very classic causal inference, which makes for a very funny little group. And then as I was explaining my problem, one of them just went like, oh, if it's almost always the same, why do not just focus on the moments when it's not the same? And then I was like, huh? And it's like, oh, that's called outlier detection. You know, if something is almost always the same, and then sometimes it's not the same, that's interesting. What happens when it's not the same? Especially in the context of media, right? Kind of like stuff going viral or spikes in engagement. That's super fascinating. And I was just sitting there like this. You know, the surprise Pikachu meme. Because I was like, oh my god, how did I not think of this? And all of a sudden, in the span of like 30 seconds, my research went from completely dead, I'm not even sure what I'm gonna present, to being like, this is actually really interesting, really novel, and super cool. I was completely mind blown by that. And then I talked to my supervisors about it, they loved it. It's also super interesting because in management, there is a lot of theorizing about like outliers, right? Especially when you're talking about like startups and entrepreneurship and these like mega companies. These are not standards, right? These are not average companies. Like basically all the big companies are outliers. But studying outliers is very difficult because, you know, to study anything, you need like a sample of them. And then if there is a sample of them, they are not really outliers, right? So like it's pretty hard to do this. So contributing this way is fairly easy. So I was like, oh, that's great, lovely. And I also just find it super fascinating, right? Like looking at kind of the exceptional is always more fun than looking at like the average, to me at least. So yeah, all of a sudden we went from fighting the data and trying to torture something useful out of it, like really working against the data, to really leaning into the core strength of the data and using it for what it's kind of like meant for. To me, this was like this is a lesson I keep relearning. And this is why I wanted to make this video about it, because I think that we always underestimate how much talking to people helps. Both in terms of like, you know, managing your psychology, which is like the big rock in getting through a PhD, but also just getting new ideas, right? There is a bunch of Strength of Weak Ties is like the OG paper that, you know, a lot of the good ideas that you will get are not going to come from, you know, like your tight group, but like someone who is a bit more cursory, because they will have access, like they will be the bridge to new information. This is especially important to keep in mind when you really don't feel like chatting, you know, that when you feel stuck and when you feel that you just need to sink in more and more and more hours into the problem, that is probably the point where you should try to just chat with someone about it. And maybe a fresh perspective will just be that extra little push that makes your research rise like a phoenix out of the ashes. So yeah, it was a fun experience, and you will hear how it goes. I don't want to repeat the paper in 6 weeks style of project, but I do want to. Obviously, you will hear about like how that project is going, because it's a poster, and I made one poster before, but that was more like non-scientific than scientific. So making a proper scientific poster is going to be a very interesting experience for me. So I will take you along, that's for sure. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.